You're now listening to Vices and Vultures, a podcast on cultures. Welcome back to the Unpacked segment of Vices and Vultures, where we share from our collection of solo interviews done by the co-hosts. What's going on, everybody? This is A2. In the previous episode, I made note of the thriving Bronx culture that has taken off within the past 5 years. I'm happy to present the following conversation as a highlight of another one of these Bronx creatives. Addie Rivera is a Bronx-made, Bronx-based visual artist, and we spend time discussing some of the work she has done to highlight the diversity of her beloved Bronx community.
I definitely never wanted to be a videographer. I hated the camera. I went to school for production. I hated being on set. I hate lighting, camera work, like where you have to stand, all this stuff. I was like, I don't want to touch it. I hate technology, which doesn't make sense. But I wanted to do video editing. I just wanted to be behind the I wanted to be
behind the scenes,
like so behind the scenes. Like,
right.
I didn't want to be a part of production. I didn't want to be a part of production. I wanted to be only post-production and be like, listen, you deal with all the outside stuff and you give me everything and I'll make a final product.
Right.
But then I met Javi and Joe, the BX Barista and Life of Javi. And Javi was like, oh, you have a camera? I was like, yeah. He was like, bet you're going to start using it. And I was like, no. Like, I was so upset that I had to use my camera, but I'm so grateful I did.
Right.
Because, like, with video editing, like, since you're behind the scenes even more so than anybody else, it's like you don't get to meet people, you don't get to be involved. And when I picked up the camera and, like, I had to learn how to, you know, push people out of my way since I'm so small. And I had to learn to, like, project my voice and being like, I need this shot, please move.
Right.
Except it's a lot less please and more of just shoving.
Right.
But,
that's how we do in New York.
Yeah, pretty much, you know? Especially, like, being from the Bronx is like, get out my fucking way. Like,
yeah. So that was just, so it wasn't until you started, like, filming in the specialty coffee scene that you really started actually, like, videoing people before you were just, so were you able to get editing only, like, projects prior to that? Like, were you kind of, like, in that space for a bit?
Yeah, well, it was mostly just internships. So, like, my first internship out of college was video editing.
Right.
And that's when I purchased, like, the Adobe Creative Cloud. And I was like, okay, like, I'm going to focus on After Effects and Premiere.
Right.
And then every internship after was just video editing. And I was like, this is perfect. But the more I started, like, doing it, I wanted to edit on my own and for my own stuff. And I was like, okay, but I need footage to edit if I want to edit. So who's going to give that to me? Like, I can't keep waiting around for it.
Right.
So that's when I purchased the camera, but I actually never touched it because I was too scared. But I was like, now that I actually have footage,
okay,
it made me fall in love with video editing more, and it made me kind of, like, appreciate both sides.
Yeah, because you worked to get that footage.
Yeah.
And you were just like, okay, now, like, and that was the thing about me, like, when I started, like, video editing heavily, was my idea of getting, you know, a final product out was just making sure I was there so I can understand and capture the energy to begin with. So would that be something that, like, you're trying to do, or, like, are you digging even more into, like, different aspects? Because, you know, there's a lot of different things that videographers and video editors try to do with their work. Like, if they appeal to emotion, just visuals, like, are they minimalist? Like, what is your approach to it?
I definitely think I'm always trying to tell a story.
Right.
Like, even if it's just the event of, like, what happened from A, B to C. Like, I want you to feel like you were there,
right,
understand the entire event, and I definitely do want to play with emotions, especially, like, doing something like Bronx Boys or my I Am Every Woman. That was mostly for emotion, like, getting to know these people or getting you to feel something. But if I'm filming an event, I want you to be excited, but also follow the event and be like, I was there from beginning to end.
Right. Got you. So talk more about these projects that you've done, specifically Bronx Boys and I'm Every Woman. I'm not familiar with the second one, so maybe talk about that first, because I'm curious.
So I Am Every Woman, I created it. It's like, I don't know if you'd consider it a film or, like, an expression piece, but Jerlani, she runs the art events at Boogie Down Grind, and so she hit me up and she was like, listen, you represent Bronx women, like, I have this idea, like, I want your photos up and I want you to create a video. She didn't give me any guidelines. She was just like, it'd be great since you're a videographer and a video editor is something you should do. So I was like, bet. And it was really simple. Like, I am every woman. So I grabbed a bunch of Bronx women, and super last minute too. It was amazing. I was like, I need your help. And they were like, I got you. And so that was so cool. So we all met up, not at the same time, but I met up with all of them. And I was like, write 3 I am pieces or I am sentences that like represent you. And then I put it all together and like filmed B-roll and just like audio recorded their voices and just like brought it all together to represent like not just them but every woman out there.
Right. Okay. So the other part of that, the males, talk about that series and how that came about. Was that also something that was kind of like spontaneous, or did you get more time to do it, and or kind of just that whole process?
So Bronx Boys is about 4 Bronx males who grew up in the Bronx and are currently still residing in the Bronx, but each have a very specific passion that kind of helped them navigate the borough and like kind of like it didn't change their perspective or anything, but it gave them each a different perspective of the Bronx. And so I definitely had more time for that. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, I sat with the idea for a while. I was just like, what's something I can do that's about the Bronx, that helps the Bronx, that like, I don't know, represents the Bronx. And then I kind of like thought about my brother, and I love men, to be honest. I think they're all amazing.
Okay. I'm with that.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like, I don't know, both genders are put in a bad light. So I was like, and I have a brother who grew up in the Bronx, and if you look at him from the outside, you're going to think, here's this aggressive Bronx male. Like, that's all you're going to see. And It's like, if you got to know each of these Bronx guys, you would see, like, they're the sweetest, smartest, most creative people, like, in the whole world. And it's like, I wanted people to see that. So it's like, I didn't know how to do it. And then I was approached by Miguel and Kat, and they're, like, a creative team. Then they were like, we want to do the Telly channel, where it's just, like, televised TV. And I was like, okay, well, I have this idea about Bronx Boys. Like, it'd be a documentary series. And they were like, bet. So then we all... they were like, they gave me the guidelines, like, okay, we want 8 episodes. We want, like, your would be premiered on Monday, so we need it done by this time. Like, we need 4 episodes by, like, I'm gonna make up a date, like, June 1st or something like that. So, like, they gave me the structure to create Bronx Boys, because as a creative, I felt like it would just stay in my head and, like, just be, like, all over the place. Right. So, and then they also gave me questions, like, they were like, describe Bronx Boys. What's your goal with Bronx Boys? And it's like, they really helped bring out my idea more, because it's like, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to execute it.
Right, so, definitely. Yeah. So let's talk about what's been going on this whole interview. Is you just keep referencing the Bronx. So talk about, like, what it means to you. Like, you mentioned your brother. You mentioned where, like, you do your work and, like, where you've done your projects. So what does the Bronx mean to you? Because I already have had somebody talk about that, and it's just been really cool hearing, like, his story. So I just want to, like, add to that narrative.
So the Bronx means everything to me. It was I grew up on Kingsbridge in a 1-bedroom apartment my entire life. There was no moving. There was no going anywhere else. It was me and my 4 other family members in that 1 bedroom. And it was the time of my life. Like, I mean, like, you're a kid, so you don't know anything different. But it's like, I got to play on the roof. Like, who gets to say that? Like, that was my backyard. I got to run around the streets and see every single culture. Like, everything felt like it was at my fingertips in the Bronx. Right. But, like, when I go to other boroughs, it's so... you feel kind of out of place, and I feel like there's a lot of, like, I don't know, Manhattan's kind of fancy, has money. Brooklyn, I feel like, you know, there's, like, certain rules, like, there's a lot of hipsters, the neighborhood's changing. Yeah. And Queens, I don't know much about Queens or Staten Island. I really fuck with them. I'm not upset at them, but a little bit Staten Island, I don't know.
Right, Brooklyn's definitely mad different.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, I felt like at the Bronx, it's a neighborhood constantly, and it's such a community, and it's like, I felt like it did so much for me and my family. And I feel like there's so much potential here, and there's so many people that are worth something here. So it's like, I just want to be a part of the community and help the Bronx get to where it can be. Right.
And I feel like it has, especially, you know, with the interview that I just mentioned, Bronx native. And then, of course, you. These are some of the names of people that I've, like, gotten to know and see, like, on Instagram, just always throwing events. The people behind Empanology, like, things like that. So just, it's just been really cool seeing this happen, because I grew up in certain neighborhoods of the Bronx, but I never saw this. And obviously the Bronx is so diverse, but like it's kind of noticeable when something like this happens and it addresses like all the different like twists and turns that New York culture and like world culture has an effect on here. So I know that some people have been involved with some of the projects you mentioned, but like talk about like collaborating with these people who share the same mindset as you about the Bronx, and you know what you guys have done, or just just some examples, and like how has that like really driven you as far as a Bronx creative, because that's what you really are. Like whenever I think about Bronx creatives, I think about you and a couple other people.
Thank you. Let's see, collaborations. Well, I don't know if me and Amaris, it was like necessary collaboration, but he filmed. It was like really similar to Bronx Boys, where it's like he got a bunch of Bronx natives who were like a wrestler, rapper, stuff like that. Interviewed them, got them in B-roll and stuff, but he had so much footage and he's so busy, like he's running a freaking retail store, like he's throwing events.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, so it's like, and it's like, it was such pretty footage. So he gave it to me because he knew I was a video editor, and he was like, hey, like, I need your help. And I was like, bet. Right. So we did that together. I think it was about 4 or 5. I edited like mini 1 minute little clips for him and stuff like that. Little, I don't know, can a documentary be a documentary if it's 1 minute?
I mean, I don't know. Alex was on Bronx Boys, the Bronxer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I guess technically. All right, yeah, so Bronx Boys, I guess I did a bunch of collaborations. So there's Alex, he's a photographer, videographer. Like, me and Alex are pretty much, like...
very similar.
Yeah, like what we do, which I think is amazing about the Bronx, because Alex can look at me as competition, but instead he looks at me as, like, a fellow Bronxer,
Right.
And it's like, his whole thing is, like, he wants to give a platform to artists and stuff like that, which is, like, why I loved capturing him for Bronx Boys, because he's out here capturing a bunch of Bronx artists and artists all over, like not even just in the Bronx, like he's so diverse. So working with him was really cool, because like getting to know him, hearing about his family, and he's so Dominican, so it was so funny, and I've been out with his family and I love that. And then there was also Christian Montero, who's a florist from the Bronx. Me and him have future stuff coming out. Like he's trying to open up a garden in the Bronx. Yeah. And he's being met with a lot of stuff. Like it's not as easy, which is like pretty.
That's what you talk about in the series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a very compelling story because of how unique it was. So, but you were saying about that?
Oh yeah, no, like it is unique. Like he's a flower growing through concrete. Right. He's amazing. So it's so he's gonna have an event where he's just trying to raise money. And he's creating a nonprofit that's for like gardening and such like that. So working with him was really cool, because we knew each other before, and I just thought like a florist in the Bronx was amazing in general. Right. But then I got to hear about like his childhood in the Bronx and like everything he went through with his mom. His mom had cancer, and it's like he went through all this stuff in the Bronx and still bloomed to be this such not soft person but beautiful person. Right. So I was just like seeing that was amazing.
Right. And being able to film it and edit it.
Yeah. Like that. And getting to know him so personally. Like everyone getting like Bronx Boys allowing me to meet these 4 people in such a personal way, and them letting me in was like, I don't know, I felt blessed. In my artist statement, especially like speaking about being a Bronx woman, it's like when I push myself hard, I think about my mom, because
you've posted about her quite a bit.
Yeah, because it's like she can draw, she can paint, like she visually sees something and she can create it. Right. But like she never got the chance. Like she grew up hardcore Hispanic, so she wasn't allowed to leave the house until she was married. So the way she describes it, she's like, I went from one house to another. She never got to travel or do anything on her own. She never got to be an artist because she was immediately a mother. So it's like when I edit or take photos, like it's like for her. It's like I'm living the life she always wished she lived. Like she always wanted to live by herself and just be like a young 20-something-year-old, but she didn't get to, so I get to for her.
Right.
Also, my dad would be pissed if I didn't mention him. My dad was a photographer too, and like he's a writer, and he actually talks about how like his family hindered his like artist path. Right. Like he wanted to go to school for English, and they were like, no, you need to have a trade, you're gonna go to Gompers, and went to some shitty school in the South Bronx that had like no funding, and I think maybe he like went to be an electrician or something like that. Wow. But it was like, yeah, so either way, both my parents are wild creative and didn't get to be.
You recently had a solo exhibit, so especially with what has been going on for you in the past 1 to 2 years, probably just like seeing like what you have done as far as your film talent and your editing talent, like what were the moments along the way that specifically led up to you just saying like, oh, let's do a solo exhibit? Or was it your idea originally?
It wasn't even my idea. Like, I always wanted, because being around everybody, everyone has their work up and everyone's like doing such big things and throwing events, and I was like, fuck, like I want to do this. Like, I want to put my name out there, not for clout or anything like that, but just to be like, look at my photos because I have something to say about the Bronx, and it's like, so I want to put that on blast. Like, it's not necessarily my name, but like my work, because it's like, I feel like my work is attached to everything I have to say, and it's like, so I want them to listen. Right. Again, not for clout.
Definitely not for clout.
So yeah, so it wasn't like me, Charlene is the one that hit me up for it, but like, there was so much, like, it was a year, and it was creepy. Or crazy? I don't know. It was a year to almost like the T, like a couple of days. Because I met Joe and Javi in March, and it was like mid-March, and at the Bronx Blogger Social, that's entirely when my life changed. Like, that's when the ball began rolling. And then there were so many, like, just little events or of meeting the right person at the right event that led to the solo show.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Vices and Vultures and considering being a supporter of this project.
Even leaving a review on your preferred podcast platform goes a long way for us.
There is more information about this episode, as well as who we are, in the show notes.
This includes all of our social media links so you can see us and not just hear us.
Vices and Vultures is brought to you by Aesthetic and is based in the great state of New York.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast for more episodes.
And tune in next time to Vices and Vultures.